Dear all, welcome to this video. In this video lecture, we are going to learn what is function overloading. We are also going to write one program to demonstrate what is function overloading. So let's get started. First of all, we'll go through the background of function overloading. But before directly jumping it into the function overloading, first of all we'll learn what is polymorphism. As we all know the definition of polymorphism, polymorphism is nothing but the ability to take more than one form. So in polymorphism, we can perform different tasks but using a single form. Okay, so there are basically two types of polymorphism. First one is compile time polymorphism and second one is runtime polymorphism. We have also gone through the difference of between compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism, as it's a very important question which was asked in summer 2019 for 4 marks. So prepare this difference very well. Now the main key point of compile time polymorphism is that the function call execution are quite faster in compile time polymorphism, whereas function call execution are very slower in case of runtime polymorphism. I am simply going to just overview this difference because we have already covered this in the theory lecture. Alright, so the main thing is that in compile time polymorphism, this polymorphism is implemented with the operator overloading and function overloading, whereas the runtime polymorphism is implemented using virtual functions. So here main thing comes which is called as function overloading. We can implement it using, and that means the compile time polymorphism can be implemented using function overloading or operator overloading. So let's just understand first what is exactly a function overloading. Function overloading means to use the same thing for different purposes. So C++ allows us, or it permits us, overloading of the function constructor as well as overloading of the operator. So the definition of function overloading is, function overloading means using same function name to define multiple functions to perform different tasks. This is also known as function polymorphism in OOP. That means in a short way we can say that function overloading is nothing but same function name but with the different parameters. Okay, so there are certain things related to the function overloading. First thing is that with the function overloading we can define a set of functions with same function name but with different argument list. That is same thing I just mentioned right now. The second thing is the function performs the different operations depending on the argument list in the function call. Obviously whatever the number of argument list or the arguments will be present in the function name, so accordingly the operation will be performed by that function. The correct function is selected by checking number and the type of arguments. The correct function will be automatically selected by the compiler. The selection will be obviously done by the compiler. How the selection will be done? By checking the number and the type of argument. So this is the most important part. Now for example, here the following function add is overloaded and it also have the different type of arguments. For example, if you observe in this type of example, there is a function prototype and there is also a function call mentioned. In function prototype, as you can see, there are total 4 functions, but all the functions are having same name. That is, if you observe, there are total add and add. There are total 4 add functions. So what's the difference between them? The difference between them is that if you see, the data type of each function is quite different, as well as the number of arguments are also different. For example, in the first function prototype, add function has 2 integer kind of data members. Second function add has 3 integer variables, like we can say. Then third add function has 1 integer x and second one is double y. So here the data type is different and the total number of arguments passed to the function are also different. Now in the next there is a function call. So sum is equal to add, that is this is the same function name add, and here as you can see the number of arguments which are passed are also different. That is, we can say some are of the integer type, some are of the double or we can say float type, right? So here we can say that here function call 1 uses prototype 2. Why? Function call 1, that is add function call, has 10, 20 and 30. This total 3 integer kind of members. So here it will obviously call this, or it will obviously call this function prototype number 2, as it matches with the second number of prototype. Same way we can see the function call 2 will match with what? We can say that it will match, or it will call to the function prototype, which one? Fourth one. Why? Because you can see this is a double, so it matches with 355.56, 12345.85. Same way we can say the function call, that is third function call, will match with what? It will call to which one? To first one. And the fourth one will match with which one? With the third one. So this same thing is explained in this notes. Now the selection process of the function, as I said that the selection, that means in the function overloading the selection of proper function is done according to the following steps. First step is that the compiler first tries to find the exact match in which number and the type of arguments are same in the function prototype. Obviously the compiler may get confused that which function needs to be called. So this will be obviously dependent on the number of arguments and the type of the arguments. If the exact match is not found, then the compiler uses the integral promotions of the actual argument types, such as character to int and float to double. So these integral promotions will be performed by the compiler. Now the compiler then tries to find the exact match with the promoted argument types. So in that case it will try to find the exact match of the promoted argument types. But what if the step 1 and both step 2 gets failed, then the compiler tries to use certain built-in conversions. So in that case the compiler will try to do certain built-in conversions. Now these built-in conversions can be integer to long, integer to float, or integer to double, long to float, etc., etc. Also there is a possibility even if this case doesn't match, so in that case some integral promotions and built-in conversions are also performed by the compiler. But what if all these above steps fails? Then in that case then the compiler will display the error message that the function does not match it. Okay, so such kind of error will be generated. So this is just the scenario regarding selection process of the function, right? So now we'll move towards the program. We have to write a program which will demonstrate the function overloading. So in this experiment we are going to write a program using function overloading. Now using function overloading, what we are going to do? We have to calculate the addition of, we have to perform the addition of what? Of 2 integer numbers and 2 float numbers. This is very simple program. All we have to do is just we have to do the addition of 2 integer numbers and 2 float numbers. Only the difference is that we have to use a simple concept of function overloading. Alright, so we'll see the coding of it. So before moving on to the coding, simply type onto the Google, that is C++ compiler online free. So these are certain, you will get the link of the different compilers which are freely available on the internet. So in that, if I have clicked on the link first one, so here I have already pasted my code without wasting any time. So let's just get started with the code of the program. Alright, so as we have to do the function overloading, make sure, again I am repeating that function overloading means same function name but different number of parameters, as well as there may be a different data type. Okay, so first of all, here I include this IO stream. I am not mentioning it as .h just because I am running it online on the compiler. Like I said in the previous videos, what is exactly a namespace? So we have to include this namespace standard. Then now let's get moved to the main logic. First of all, for function overloading, I am declaring this add name, means the name of the function is add, which are having two parameters, that is one is of the type long x and one is of the type long y. As both the data types of this values, that is x and y, are long, so the return type of this add method will be obviously long. Now into the body of the add function, we'll see that there is a one variable declared as long, that is sum is the name of that variable, and in the sum I am going to store x plus y. Simply I am going to add these two integer, means long integer values, that is x and y addition will be stored into sum, and at the last the function will return the sum, that is final addition will be returned into the sum variable. Now next, again I am declaring the same function. Remember, function overloading has same function name, that is add but different parameters. Here these are having the data type as long, here these are having the data type as float x and float y. So in the body of this, as this both the values are float, so obviously the return type of the add function will be float. In the body of the add function, the same thing is done, that is float sum variable is declared, and the sum variable will also store the addition of x plus y, and at last it will return the sum. So in this way, till now I have simply declared two functions. One is of having data type long, and second one is having data type float. Now moving on to the main. While running this program into the Turbo C, mention it as a void main, but as I am running it into the online compiler, I am mentioning its data type as integer. So int main, in the curly braces, now I have taken one, declared some variables as long, comma a, comma b, comma x, semicolon, then float c, comma d, comma y, semicolon. Int main, make sure I have simply declared some variables, that is a, b, x are having data type long, c, d, y are having data type as float. On the next line, there is a cout, that is I'll simply ask the user to enter the two integer numbers on which I'll have to perform some addition, right? So on the next line, cin will simply read those, or it will simply accept whatever the integers will be entered by the user, that is a and b will be accepted as integer, and in x what I am going to store, I am simply going to make a function call. This is a function call, dear students, add a comma b. So this is a function call, that means as you can see, these are the integers a, b are having data type as long int, obviously. So the long int, that means here this function will be called without any confusion. So the compiler will call according to the data type of a and b are having data type long. So this function will be called at this point. So whatever the function will be called here, that is add, so it will perform some addition, and this addition will be returned, or it will be stored into the x, and at last will display the sum of the integers as x. So this x value will be printed here. Now that means whatever the output of the integer sum is there, So that will be displayed here in the output. Moving on to the next line of the code. Cout, enter the two floating point numbers. So here I'll ask the user to enter two floating point numbers, and Cin will read those two numbers, that is C and D. On the next line, y is equal to add of C comma D. Add of C comma D. So here it is also made a function call. Now, to avoid the ambiguity or the confusion of the compiler, what it will do, it will refer to the selection process. What it will do, it will refer to the number of arguments as well as to the type of argument. Here C and D are having the data type as float. So float, that means this function call will be done by the compiler. So float add, it will add or it will perform the addition of two floating point numbers, and this addition will be returned to, or it will be saved into the y, and at last cout statement will print sum of the floats, that is the total addition of these two floating point numbers will be printed in the last point, and at last return 0. So in this way I have performed this code. It's a very simple task. I have done nothing besides declaring the two functions which are having different type of arguments but same function name, and I have simply performed the addition and I have made the call to that required function. So let's see the output of this function. We'll try to run this. There's a key F9 to run. Now the output is displayed over here. Enter the two integers. Suppose I've entered 5 and 6. So the sum of integers is 11. Now enter two floating point numbers, that is suppose I've entered 5.5 and second number is suppose 7.8. The sum of floats is 13.3. In this way we have performed the function overloading, and this is the output we have achieved right now. So if you have queries regarding this, so you can contact me. Thank you so much.